Hi everybody. This is the last bit of the chapter on social psychology that we were covering in class. And if you recall, there's some information that we needed to finish up that I was going to be putting on video, which is why you've tuned in, obviously. Just to give you a heads up for the plan for the rest of the semester, as you already know, this video is going to be included on the last test. And then in class on December 5th, little typo there, December 5th and 7th, we're going to be doing the chapter on stress and health, which actually is a really interesting one, so I hope you'll all definitely be there, and it should be one that's very useful for you as you move through finals. Then on December 10th, we're having the last exam, which is Monday, and that will include everything since exam 3. So what I do plan to do is to have a little repetition with what we covered in class, just because it's easier to talk about altruism by sort of making it a whole unit and talking about the study of altruism, beginning with the case of Kitty Genovese. So I'll just review that a little bit as we, in preparation for talking about the study of altruism. So, as you recall, Kitty Genovese was a nurse who was working and living in New York. She arrived home to her apartment, which I showed you here, what her street looked like. She was assaulted by an attacker here. People were up here in the apartments. Her neighbors in the upstairs apartments witnessed it. People across the street from her also witnessed it in the Mowbray apartment house. And they also saw one another through the windows behind their curtains and so forth. She was yelling for help. They had heard her, and after the attacker left, she ran from him, ran behind. Here's an aerial view, a schematic. So this is where the first attack happened, where I was just showing you. She ran behind to get into the back door entrance, which led up to the second floor apartments, and that's where she was assaulted for a second time and killed. As I mentioned in class, when the police interviewed the witnesses, what they found was that a large number of people had actually witnessed what had happened, and not only did nobody go down to help her, but also nobody picked up the phone and called the police, which, when it made headlines, made a lot of people wonder within the psychological community, what makes people help? When do people help? And I showed you this flow chart of the theory that Latney and Darley developed in doing their research experiments examining this question. So if you recall, I said that they did a lot of different experiments, like having a researcher pretend that she was unscrewing a light bulb in another room, and of course it was just a tape recording, and the person who was waiting for the experiment was waiting outside in a waiting room, and the question was, would that person open the door to go into the laboratory to see if she needed help after it seemed like she had fallen and it had hurt her leg. So they had done other things, as I said, where other kinds of experiments where they had people laying on the street pretending to be passed out or so forth, and trying to determine when people would stop to see if that person needed some help. Through these kinds of experiments, they developed this theory of helping behavior. We need to first notice the incident. If not, we're not going to help. If we do, then we need to interpret the event as an emergency, which I had said can actually be pretty ambiguous. If somebody is joking around with somebody else, how do you know if it's joking around or if it's actually an emergency? And I think the scenario I gave in class was, a couple flirting with one another, and she's, no, stop. Is she flirting, or is she somebody in need of help? And getting it wrong could have pretty dire consequences if you stop to help, because the boyfriend might get pretty mad at you. She might get pretty mad at you. And even if they don't, it's very embarrassing. So this is kind of high stakes, this interpretation component. And in fact, I had showed, I can't speak today. They had I had shown you this in class, or I at least told you it was there. I'm not going to read it out loud to you, but I'll let you read it on your own. You have all of the slides. But this is the case, a case that was published in a newspaper of a man who's actually up on criminal charges because he tried to help when he thought somebody needed help, and it turned out there was no emergency. So this can be pretty high stakes. And then if you do interpret it as an emergency, do you decide, this is my responsibility, this is something for me to take care of? And if not, then people don't help. But if yes, people do attempt to help. Now, one thing that Latney and Darley discovered was something that was really counterintuitive, and it's known as the bystander effect. And that refers to the fact that the more people that are there, the less odds are that somebody will actually help you. And that is very counterintuitive. You would think that the more people that are there, the greater the odds that at least somebody will help you. But as it turns out, that's not what happens. As it turns out, that the more people that are there, the lower the odds. So in that experiment that I told you, when an individual was waiting in a waiting room, and it seemed as though the experimenter was in another room in the laboratory and had fallen off a chair and hurt herself, hurt herself, while she was unscrewing a light bulb. If people were waiting in the waiting room alone, about 85% of them went in and opened the door to see if she needed help. But if there was one other person in the waiting room, and what they did was to have Confederates, remember, like Mr. Wilson in Milgram's experiment was a Confederate, an actor pretending to be another subject in the experiment. If another person who was a Confederate was in the waiting room, only 60% of people actually tried to help. When there were two other people, it went down to 50, and so forth. So the more people are there, the fewer people will actually help, and this is known as the bystander effect. What they and others already have also figured out is that not only do fewer people help when there's more people there on average, but the people who do help, it takes them longer to decide to help. So here's with two people present, you can see that among the people that do help, here's the reaction time in seconds. They're much faster on average than when there's 3 people present or when there's 6 people present. So this is percentage helping compared with time. So, by the time you're 100 seconds in, you've got, over 90% of the people helping when there's 2 people present, only 70-something, about 72% or so helping when there's three people present, and about 40 or so people helping when there's 6 people present. But notice, to get to that 40% level, if we go all the way over, when there's 3 people present, it took less than 50 seconds. And the same thing for when there's 2 people present, it took about 30 seconds. So even when you get the same rates eventually, even if you do get the same rates eventually, it's faster when people are faster to decide to help when there's fewer people. So when do people help, right? I mean, that's the thing that researchers wanted to know from all of this. And there have been a number of factors that researchers have discovered as important to that question of increasing the likelihood of bystanders helping. One is the feel-good, do-good effect. And basically, when people are in a good mood or something good has happened to them, they're more likely to help, as opposed to when something bad has happened to you or you're more grumpy, you're in a foul mood, people are less likely to help. And if you think about your own behavior, if you're just feeling negative, if you have a day where you're feeling angry, you're frustrated about things, you are less likely to help people, hold doors for people and that kind of thing. And I don't mean to say you specifically, but you meaning all of us, the population in general. And researchers found this out by doing things like that scenario that I told you about that Latney and Darley used, where they had people laying on the street looking like they were passed out. Or they had people on the street who looked like they were struggling with a lot of packages and trying to open a car door. They actually planted a $20 bill on the street prior to, further up on the street, in front of where the person who was in need of help was stationed. And the people who found the $20 bill were more likely to stop and help than people who did not find the $20 bill. So that's evidence of the feel-good, do-good effect. Another one is feeling guilty, if you somehow feel guilty over the fact that somebody else needs help. And a lot of charitable organizations pull on our heartstrings in that way. They, say things like, for just the cost of a cup of coffee, you could feed this child for a week. Right? And, they're using really good strategies. It's a really good psychological strategy for getting people to help, to make that phone call and make that donation. Making you realize, just a cup of coffee to you, but this is a week's worth of food to somebody else. And it's designed to make you feel guilty. Not passing judgment, but it is a strategy based in social psychology that they've used well. Now, seeing others who are willing to help also gets people to help more often. So in those experiments where they had the Confederates in the waiting room with the real subject, when the Confederates were told to go in and help, it turns out that the real subjects actually went in and helped much more often than when the Confederates sat there and did not help. Perceiving the other person as deserving of help is also a big factor. Somebody is more likely to help an individual who seems to have been the victim of circumstance or of no fault of their own. So especially children, it's not their fault that it's never a child's fault that they're in a bad situation. And so people are very willing, much more willing to help children on average than adults. If people view adults as being responsible for their own predicament, then they tend to be less likely to help. Now, knowing how to help is also really important. If you don't know how, then you're not going to. For the case of Kitty Genovese, for example, I think a lot of those people did not know how to help. They didn't know how, in terms of physically going down there. How do you disarm a knife-wielding violent person? A lot of us don't know how to do that. And so that would explain why nobody went down to call. And nobody went down to help, rather. It doesn't explain why nobody made a phone call, because they all did know how. I'll get to that in a moment. Also, a personalized relationship, when you know somebody, and that makes some sense. When you know somebody, it's harder to turn them down. If you see a neighbor that you know well and their car is stuck, we tend to be more likely to help that person than a random stranger on the street. Now, factors that decrease the likelihood of bystanders helping, one is the presence of other people, and that's the bystander effect. And this speaks to what happened in the Kitty Genovese case. So as I mentioned, not only did they witness the event and know that she needed help, but they also saw one another through their windows. So everybody knew that everybody else had seen this. And as it turns out, what the people revealed when they were interviewed by reporters after the fact and the psychologists was that when they saw the other people, everybody assumed somebody else had called. So nobody called, not because they were heartless, but because there was diffusion of responsibility. Everybody thought somebody else did it. Now remember, diffusion of responsibility, we spoke about that when we spoke about social loafing, contributing less to a group effort than to an individual effort. And that seems to be part of what happened here. It's not that people weren't willing to put in the effort, but everybody assumed somebody else had. So another thing that reduces bystanders helping is being in a big city or a small town. The cultures of those environments tend to lend themselves less to people helping. Vague or ambiguous situations, when it's not clear if somebody needs help. So that newspaper article that I have posted on the slides, for example, might make you think twice about when it's vague. When you're really not sure if the individual needs help. Same thing, somebody laying on the ground. Do they really need help? Or is this where the guy lives? right? Is he there every day, or is this somebody who passed out and needs some help? If you're not familiar with that part of town and you don't know, then you don't know whether it's a clear case of somebody needing help. And then lastly, when the personal costs of helping outweigh the benefits, and that goes again to what happened with Kitty Genovese, is that, going down and trying to physically help her, people were at risk, would have been putting themselves at risk. So going down and helping her had some fairly high stakes costs in the making. Same thing with stopping on the highway to help a motorist. At night somebody's stranded. Are they really needing help, or is this somebody waiting for somebody to help them so they can rob them? It's a little bit dicey. Of course, there's no cost really associated with making a phone call, so that's never such a negative thing. So in the case of Kitty Genovese, it turned out to be the personal cost of helping outweighing the benefits. It turned out to be the presence of other people and the bystander effect, and everybody else thinking somebody else had already made the call. That concludes that topic. Certainly email me if you have any questions about it, or ask me when we see each other in class. And I just wanted to move on to our very last topic, which is social relations and attraction. So this is the last type of social relations that we're going to be covering. And the question here is, what attracts two people, either as friends or as life partners, as lovers? What attracts two people together? And there are a number of factors that turn out to be pretty crucial. One is proximity and familiarity. It turns out that when we are around other people for a length of time and we get to know them and we have the opportunity to become familiar with them by virtue of our proximity, we tend to end up attracted to them more often than when we're less familiar with them. So in other words, people that we work with, people we go to class with, people who attend our churches or various clubs or organizations we may belong in or belong to, we have the opportunity to get to know people and people get familiar. And it turns out we really like what's familiar. We had talked about this when we spoke about development and emotional development, that babies and toddlers will attach to the people who are there a lot and who become very familiar to them. And it turns out we never really outgrow that. When we're adults and we're looking for friends and we're looking for romantic attachments, people who are familiar to us tend to be more attractive to us. So this is one reason why we often do end up partnered with people that we meet from our neighborhoods, from our school, from work, and so forth. Now, another issue, of course, is physical attractiveness. And it turns out that, people do tend to be attracted to people who are more attractive than not. However, we do not tend to end up paired up with the most attractive people that we can find. It turns out not everybody is shooting to be with the 10. As it turns out, people more often end up partnered with somebody who is at the same level of attractiveness as themselves. So people who, researchers have gotten individual photographs of couples, right? So each individual separately, and asked large groups of people to rate them on their attractiveness. And it turns out that people who are rated as 5s, their partners tended to also be rated as 5s, and 3s ended up partnered with people also rated as 3s, and 8s with 8s, and so forth. So, of course, it's not true for every couple, but on average, we tend to be end up attracted to, partnered with people who are on the same level of attractiveness as ourselves. Now, people who are more attractive than not get other kinds of benefits in society. There's all kinds of awful studies that have been done, well, the studies aren't awful, but the results are a little bit disturbing, that we tend to give the benefit of the doubt very often to people who are more attractive. They're rated as more intelligent, more likable. Teachers, if they're shown pictures of kids, tend to rate the more attractive kids, grade school kids, as more intelligent and having better potential in school than kids who are less attractive. When college students are asked to rate the quality of essays that are written, when they're shown photographs of the author, and none of the photographs they were shown were actually the author, but when they're shown photographs of attractive people, they rate the essay more highly than when they saw the photograph of a less attractive person and told that they were the author. So there's all kinds of ways in which people who are more attractive do get benefits in our society. That's really quite unfair. On the other hand, it's not necessarily correlated with our attraction to other people. Now, with that said, there are some very high-profile exceptions to this. You do see people who are with people who are much more attractive than them. That happens very often with celebrities, and typically the less attractive individual in the couple tends to have some other attribute that makes them a real catch. Money is is a big one. Sense of humor is another one. Intelligence. Or people who are just a lot of fun to be around. So attractiveness is not the only factor, but it's one of them. And lastly, we have similarity. There's that old saying, opposites attract, and that may be true. Opposites may attract, but they tend not to stay together. It turns out that we do tend to end up paired with people who are similar to us in a variety of ways. People tend to end up partnered with people that are at the same socioeconomic background, same ethnicity, same religion, same political affiliation, same level of education, and so forth. That's not the case for every couple, of course. Remember, individual differences are always going to be a factor when we're talking about human beings, and no more so than in social psychology. But what we see with similarity is that more often than not, we do end up paired with people who are very similar to us. So when you look at something like the importance of similarity, and then the proximity and familiarity, that we tend to become attracted over time to people that are familiar to us, it becomes ironic that people go to places like singles bars to look for partners, because it's the place where you're probably least likely to find one. Because all kinds of people go to a bar, but you're more likely to find somebody who's similar to you on a variety of levels, and that you're familiar with if you look at work or political organizations that you belong to, social organizations you belong to, and so forth. So that's all I wanted to cover for this chapter. As I said, we will be doing the stress and health chapter on Wednesday and Friday in class, and our last exam is on the 10th. And please do email me if you have any questions or need any help with anything.